What is the future of theme parks? Is Pandora at Disney's Animal Kingdom a success? And what's up with all the long lines at Disney World in January? Len Testa is here to answer those and a lot more questions. You're listening to the Tomorrow Society podcast. Hey there, thanks for joining me here on episode 39 of the Tomorrow Society podcast. I am your host, Dan Heaton. It's such a fascinating time right now for theme parks and the industry. Just looking at Disney World, you have Toy Story Land coming this summer, Galaxy's Edge in 2019, you have Guardians of the Galaxy and Ratatouille at Epcot, Tron at the Magic Kingdom. And that's just the really basic stuff. When you look overseas, you have expansions to Paris and Tokyo. Back at Disneyland, you have a Marvel Land coming to DCA along with Galaxy's Edge. Plus, if you think even more recently, just in the past few weeks, you've had the new fees for parking at the hotels. You had the Redhead being replaced at Pirates of the Caribbean, and people had some vocal thoughts on both of those. What I've just described only scratches the surface of what's happening in the theme park industry. And I wanted it to go a little further with this conversation. And that's why it's always great to have Len Testa on the show, because I know we can dive in deeper into what Disney is doing and look at things like transportation and the gondolas are coming. What's coming next? Or even beyond that, what's the future of theme parks? What's going to happen when we've gotten through all these blockbuster editions? And that's why I love having Len on the show, because you can just ask him questions about all these things. He has plenty to say about every one. And if you are a fan of Disney podcast in particular, you're very familiar with Len through WDW Today and his current work on the Disney Dish. So it's really cool to have him on the show. And because of that, I'm going to stop rambling right now because I would like to get to that conversation. So here is my discussion with Len Testa. I am thrilled to once again be speaking with a theme park expert who is back for his third time on the podcast. He is the president of Touring Plans, the co-author of The Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World, and also co-hosts the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It is Len Testa. Len, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Well, great. So I've brought you similar. We did this about a year ago where I brought you 7 questions, which I think turned into about 35. But I've brought you 7 questions or 7 topics to talk about. But before we do that, I did want to ask you kind of what's been going on lately at Touring Plans and what are you guys doing over there?
So we've released a couple of interesting things. We updated our Disney dining plan calculator so that you can figure out whether the dining plan makes sense for you. We've updated all of our crowd calendars based on what's been going on with the parks since the beginning of the year. We're working on updates for Toy Story Land when it opens, and then, looking at a little farther Galaxy's Edge.
Right, yeah. So as far as Toy Story Land, that'll be interesting. Are you guys expecting there to be a big bump from that? Because I feel like there was excitement, but now it's kind of died down, and a lot of people are just looking right past it.
I think it'll be popular with parents with small children because of the lack of those kinds of attractions in the park already. So basically, right now it's Toy Story Mania or Disney Junior when the park opens. I expect there to be a lot more demand for the Toy Story Land rides because of that. And also, it helps that Disney put the entrance to Toy Story Mania within Toy Story Land, so people will be able to see the other attractions as they go to Toy Story Mania. And I think that's going to help those other 2 attractions a lot. So here's the thing that I think is interesting about it, though. Alien Saucer Swirl is going to have Fast Pass Plus. I can't figure that out because that can't be a large capacity attraction.
Yeah, maybe they're just expecting the demand to be so high. Because, I mean, I'm trying to think, if you consider like the carousel or something, it's going to be different than that. But are they going to do something like Dumbo where they have enough space to put all the people in there?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it would work almost exactly like Dumbo, where half of the ride's going to be dedicated to Fast Pass at least, maybe 80%. But it should work the same way. Disney hasn't said that they're going to do that innovative queue thing that they do with Dumbo in the Magic Kingdom, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that at some point in the future. They probably would have said up front that that's how it was going to work. So we'll see.
Yeah, they probably would have sold it as, this is our new, they would name it something different. It wouldn't be the same thing. It'd be like our special interactive playground or something. But
right.
It's just interesting because I know we've been seeing, they're seeing clips of them putting the Slinky Dog coaster in. And I just find it, I guess just because there's been so many announcements right now for everything coming in 2021 and 2 and 3, that it's like, oh yeah, that's coming out this summer. I kind of forgot. So it'll be interesting to see how everybody feels about it.
Yeah, we've got that. Also, the studios, we've got the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is based on the new Mickey Mouse cartoons. And those things will be open about the same time as Galaxy's Edge. But yeah, I think you're right to an extent. Lots of people are looking past all of the stuff that's going to happen over the next 18 months.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So a lot of my questions are kind of about a lot of those. So I'm going to try not to cannibalize my own questions here. But I don't want to oversell them, though. But let's just dive right in. Okay. So number one. Now, Pandora has been open for about 10 months. We haven't seen much of a drop in wait times, amazingly. No. Yeah. And, I visited in January. I thought it was really cool beyond, the capacity kind of being weird. So now that we're about 10 months out, from what you've gathered from attendance, satisfaction, everything you're hearing, do you think, it's a success, but is this the success that Disney hoped for in terms of like attendance and what it really has done for the park on the whole?
Okay, so it's not like Harry Potter was for Universal, because that's a once in a generation thing that, we'll probably see it again with Galaxy's Edge, but there are a few properties in the world that there are few movie franchises in the world that are going to act like that. I think Disney is super happy with the ratings that Flight of Passage is getting. It's the highest rated attraction in any Universal or Disney theme park in the United States, according to our raters. The only people that don't like it are small children, which I kind of understand that. But in terms of response, I think it's done everything that Disney could hope for. Once people are in the park, I don't think it's driving much demand to the Animal Kingdom. Maybe a little bit, but certainly not the 40% bump in attendance that we saw with Universal Orlando. We expected somewhere around 5%, I think, 5 to 8%, and I think that's what Disney's getting out of it. So they're pleasantly surprised with how it worked out. But I think here's what's telling about it, Dan. All the announcements that just came out over the last month or so about park expansions in California, park expansions in Paris, park expansions in Japan. None of them mentioned Pandora. None. If it was a success, Disney would be duplicating it. So it's not. I don't think it's viewed as a success within the company.
See, that's interesting because it's easy to look at the lines. A lot of that is capacity, especially with Flight of Passage, though I've heard it, it's very good. I didn't get to get on it, but it's easy to look at that and say, wow, it's a home run. But that's kind of what I wanted to ask, because I'm thinking like the Animal Kingdom didn't seem any more crowded. That area is more crowded, but other areas aren't. And I doubt they're getting people now just visiting the resort for that. So it seems like it's helped them like as a complimentary thing to fill out the park.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. But not as much like, okay, this is going to be something that it's not on the level of Galaxy's Edge or something.
It's not a destination attraction. People are not going to go to Disney World just to ride that. And I think that's what, back in 2011, that's what Disney was anticipating. And I think as we got closer and closer to it, we realized that wasn't going to be it. The other thing, too, from a Disney's perspective, in the first full quarter in which Pandora was opened, Disney didn't mention a single thing about it in their quarterly update to financial analysts. So it's from an Imagineering perspective, I think it's a huge success. The Imagineers did fantastic work with what is, let's face it, a flawed premise, right? And Avatar was never going to be a film franchise that you build attractions out of. The Imagineers got stuck with it because Bob Iger wanted to make sure that Universal didn't work with James Cameron. And so the Imagineers had to do the best they could. And they did literally the best that anyone could hope for. My hat's off to all of the Imagineers that worked on this. But it's not a Harry Potter thing.
Yeah, I was blown away. I mean, I had seen pictures, but just walking around that place, what they could do.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
With a property I don't care about at all. I saw the movie once. I couldn't remember it.
I said this in the book. I was like, imagine the Navi River journey ride, right? But imagine it in Galaxy's Edge. And imagine instead of the shaman at the end, you've got Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he's doing some Jedi ritual that we've never seen before, but that's part of the Star Wars canon. Like it's actually official stuff that no one has ever seen before. And imagine that the entire ceremony that he goes through is like 30 minutes long, and you have to write it 7 or 8 times to get the entire ceremony's dialogue down. Do you know what those lines would be like, Dan? I mean, you couldn't write it 7 or 8 times in your lifetime. The lines would be that long, right? Because people care about Star Wars. Nobody cares about Avatar.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's almost like
I say nobody cares about Avatar. There's like one dude on Twitter that like rants at me every time I say that. Fine. Well, okay. Yeah, Very few people care about Avatar. Go ahead.
Nobody does. And it's funny because it could really just be, hey, we're going to make this land with blue aliens that James Cameron thought of. And everybody be like, awesome. But it's Avatar and it's like, ugh.
Or they could have just done it as Beastly Kingdom, right? And it would have been, yeah, I know. That's fine. We all know why it got done. I salute every single Imagineer, every single person that built that land did better than anyone could have hoped for. They were handicapped from the beginning, and let's move on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to ask one question kind of tangential to that on this.
Sure.
But so the one big thing that I noticed is like the ridiculous line for Flight of Passage. And I was there on a Friday in January. It was before MLK weekend, but it was it was like on your schedule, it was like a 7, I think, at the end. And I saw that overflow line heading towards Harambe, and I was like, that is insane. So thinking about Galaxy's Edge, so do you think Pandora has taught Disney enough to make Galaxy's Edge, it's going to be crazy, but
it's too late.
What have they learned? Anything?
The plans for Galaxy's Edge were cast years ago. So, if Disney did not anticipate a Harry Potter level of demand when Galaxy's Edge opens, they will have made a fundamental mistake. The line to get into Disney Hollywood Studios when Galaxy's Edge opened, people will camp out the night before. And Disney has to make sure that they have accommodations for that because people will want to do that. Yeah, so they'll have to figure something like that out. I don't think I think it's in the back of Disney's mind that they have to prepare for those things. I don't think they've got plans for it yet, although I should ask.
Yeah. And you say the night before, think of Phantom Menace. Think about how that was, people camping out for, I don't even know how long, ridiculous amounts. It won't be like that, but there's going to be somebody who's going to go there like a week in advance and then start like a Snapchat or something and just be there the whole time. So I don't know, a night before might be not enough.
Back when Star Tours 2 opened, one of our employees, Scarlett Litton, basically stayed in the studios, I think, every day for like 2 months and waited in front of the green wall until it was open so that she could be first in line. And God bless her. And Scarlett, if you're listening, I love you. But I think we need to hire Scarlett again to do this for Galaxy's Edge. I think that would be the funniest thing. That as soon as the word gets out that it's that the handoff is going to happen from Imagineering to Park Ops, and then Park Ops has to run the ride for a few days. As soon as that happens, people will start waiting in line. And I think Disney has to be prepared for it. I think the line to get into the park will be... I'll be surprised if you could actually get in the park if you show up on the same day. Like I think if you show up at 8 a.m. for a 9 a.m. opening, there's no way you will get into Galaxy's Edge that day because there will be people that will have slept there the night before that will... it's going to be insane.
I don't even know. Like, I think maybe I'll see it a year later. I mean, I'd love to go sooner, but coming from Missouri, it's like, it's not like I can just try a bunch of days, and I live in Orlando. It's going to be insane. I mean, I think it'll be fun, but crazy.
What I'm interested in seeing is how Disney handles the annual pass holder and DVC previews for it. Because what I'm hearing in Disneyland is You know how like Disney has different tiers of annual pass, especially in Southern California, that you won't be invited to the preview unless you have the top tier pass, like basically everyone else with the Southern California annual pass or any pass with blackout dates. You won't be able to get into the AP preview unless you pay for it. And I think Disney may do that. Disney may charge annual pass holders for the previews and DVC holders. I think they know that they can charge $100 a person for the preview and it'll sell out every day. Disney's not above making that money.
No, I think you're right. I think they're going to find every hard ticket event, or especially the AP previews, but anything they can do, to kind of test it with fewer people, because they need to do that. But also, there'll be a lot of soft opens and different things, I would assume, before they unleash it to the masses of people.
Yeah, and the good thing is that Pandora showed us that Disney can build a really pretty immersive environment, but they've got to do way more than that for Galaxy's Edge. Like, and I've said this a few times, if there are not self-navigating droids walking around Galaxy's Edge, Disney will have failed. That is one of the minimum things that they have to do to make this land authentic. It's been in every conceptual drawing. They've been working on the patents for it for years. They've got the right employees for it. There is no technical or financial reason why we should not see droids walking around Galaxy's Edge. If it doesn't happen, it's because management didn't care. But let me say, I fully expect it to happen. There will be self-navigating autonomous droids in Galaxy's Edge.
Wow, I'm trying to picture. I can picture that land without that many crowds, how that could work, and all the stories you're doing, especially when the resort comes. I'm trying to picture that land like comparing it to like when Happily Ever After is about to play and you're on Main Street. I'm trying to picture that land like that. Yeah. And then also...
And it becomes like, what was the second Mad Max movie?
Yeah, Road Warrior.
Road Warrior. It's like that. Yeah.
Thunderdome or something.
Yeah. We're missing the Tina Turner soundtrack. Otherwise, it'd be Thunderdome.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to question number 2, basically enough. All right. Well, I'm going to kind of flip it around a little bit. So I know we're learning about so many new expansions. They announced upgrades to that horrible Studios Park in Paris. They got the new Marvel Land at DCA, Galaxy's Edge, Toy Story Land, so much to Epcot. So many blockbusters. But so looking at the new attractions for you, what do you think is like the underrated gem? The thing that we're not thinking about? Question. I think I'm teeing it up. I think we know what you're going to say. But the underrated gem that we're not thinking about that is going to be the huge hit that everybody loves.
Okay. What do you think I'm going to say?
Minnie's Railway?
Yes, that's exactly it. Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway.
I was kind of scared to say the wrong thing there, but I had a feeling.
Okay, I love the new Mickey Mouse cartoons, Dan. If your listeners listen to the end of this podcast, obviously, but then stop whatever you're doing and go onto YouTube and watch the cartoons from beginning to end. They are hysterical. All of them are great, and Disney's still putting them out. So I think they've put out 50, 60?
A lot.
Maybe more at a time. I first started watching them when I was on a Disney cruise, and Disney pipes in the cartoons into the staterooms, and I was just fascinated. I remember the first time I saw them, I was like, this is like no other Mickey Mouse cartoon I've ever seen. Mickey is funny. He's got human characteristics. He's not always the good guy, right? Like sometimes he has regular human emotions like anger and greed and stuff like that. They're just so funny. My my favorite one. Have you seen these, Dan?
Yes, I have a story about this in a minute. But
have you seen the Potato Land episode?
I think I've seen most of them.
Potato. It's a takeoff on roadside attractions and Disneyland.
Yeah.
Which is just hysterical, but a fantastic cartoon. Anyway, so supposedly in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, it's going to be those same characters with the same spirit. So the same funny Mickey Mouse, not the traditional Mickey Mouse who couldn't do anything bad, from 1935 to 2007 or whatever. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think might be some interesting technology in there as well around dynamic ride systems, like dynamic ride routing. So depending on what you feel about the ride, you may see different scenes from everyone else. That will be interesting. Yeah. Anyway, that's what I'm really looking forward to the most. I mean, obviously everyone's looking forward to Galaxy's Edge, but I think of the things that aren't Galaxy's Edge, that's going to be my sleeper hit.
Well, it's funny you mentioned those cartoons because we were there in January we stayed at the Animal Kingdom Lodge, and there's a channel that at night all they play is those cartoons. And my daughters watched them every night we were there. That's all they wanted to do. The one night they just wanted to go back to the room to watch the cartoons, basically.
Yeah. I mean, there's, like I said, there's 70 or 80, so you can bring them up on YouTube and watch them all in chronological order. But yeah, they're fantastic. I saw them, like I said, the first time I saw them was on the cruise, and it was like right before we were going to dinner, and I would have been happy just ordering room service and watching those cartoons because they were fantastic. I remember we watched them all a couple of times, and then as they would come out, like I actually have an alert now on to look for YouTube. A new one came out last night, so I watched it last night as well.
Well, that's interesting. I need to look for those on YouTube because we have like a DVD, but it only has like it's season 1 or
season
whatever.
1.
But they never released another DVD, so like we can watch those. So, but about the ride quickly. So I had not heard. I've heard about the patents, about the moods and various things you're doing.
Yeah.
But I hadn't heard they were going to use it for this ride because with the screens and the different things they're doing, they could, like you said, they could adjust it, which that fascinates me. I wasn't sure they were ready to do that this soon. I mean, for something that's coming out, in about a year or so.
Well, I think the thing that makes it interesting is they could do a test with it, right? There are two patents I think that's interesting. One changes the vehicle path depending on what thing you're looking at. So let's say Disney's showing you, and I'm just making this up, very colorful things on the left-hand side, but very musical things on the right-hand side. If you're paying attention to the left-hand side with the colorful things, Disney may change your path so that you always see colorful things because that's what people are paying attention to. If, however, you're paying attention to the musical stuff on the right-hand side, Disney might change the path that you follow to show you more musical things. I think that's relatively straightforward to do in a ride like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and they could use that as a test bed for future attractions. Like imagine you wanted to do it on a roller coaster or on a more advanced ride system. I think that's what you'll see there. Plus Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, the fact that you can imagine like a choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Game. That might be interesting too. You could all end up on the same path, but they've got enough space in the Great Movie Ride to do those alternate paths.
Yeah, that's interesting because I kind of wondered why that was put in that space, but that is one benefit there where, I mean, one, you're right at the front of the park, and it is probably going to be popular, but two, you've got that big show building. You can adjust it where it's not like you're cramming it in and putting someone in front of a screen and there's really not that much space. You actually shift people around. So I'm sure my daughters will love it. I just, I don't think I'm as probably interested in it as I probably should be based on what I've heard.
But what if the ride is dynamic like Star Tours is? Then you might then it might be more interesting. I think it helps that it's going to be in the center of the park. It's going to be a kid-friendly ride, and again, the studios does not have a lot of those. It's going to be voluminous in terms of capacity, and of course, with Galaxy's Edge, you're going to want as many big capacity rides as you can get because people are going to have to do something. So I think that's all an advantage for it. The other thing that amazes me about the studios, now that we're talking about high capacity stuff, have you seen the expansion of the parking lot that they've been doing? Basically tripling the size of the parking lot.
Whoa, no, I haven't seen that. I mean, that makes sense to a point, but if they're going to do that, you'd have to assume they're going to have a lot more attractions.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. So great. We're gonna get 100% more people into the park. What are they going to do? I mean, how many times are you going to run Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular in a day? Right. I mean, there's just not that much to do in the park. And Galaxy's Edge is only going to be 2 attractions. Even when Galaxy's Edge opens, and even when Toy Story Land opens, even when Runaway Railway opens, that will only be 5 attractions total.
Right, and then you add that on to the 4, 5, 6, depending on what you call an attraction, you're looking at 12
things. The park will have like 9 rides, when it's done, plus some shows, and stuff like that. If it wasn't for the lines, you could still do that park in 8 or 9 hours, right? It's still not a full day park. Yeah, so I don't know what they're going to do with crowds. They're going to have. I know that they're hiring more Streetmosphere characters So did you see the recent job posting for improv actors?
Yeah, I heard about that.
My sense is that's going for the studios, where there may even be like a 1-to-1 relationship between improv actors and guests. You might have like your own improv actor to keep you entertained while you're waiting in line for Galaxy's Edge. I don't know, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, I hope they can roll out some fabulous live entertainment.
Yeah, they're going to need something because people love Star Wars, but there's a limit. I mean, to what people want to get their money's worth. All right, let's move on. Speaking of crowds, number 3, but I recently heard you did a podcast with the Diz Unplug where you talked about kind of some theories about, because I went in January. We went last year over spring break. And we did not go the busiest week, thankfully, just by luck. But there was, what I noticed is the lines were long, and there were just so many people in the parks. We went in January, a lot fewer people in the park, even over MLK weekend. You could walk around, but the lines were about the same length. So it kind of gets into what you were talking about in this podcast, where you talked about possibly Disney cutting some capacity to save money. So could you delve, before I have a few questions, but I'm curious just if people haven't heard kind of the basic gist of this.
Yeah. So here was what we saw. At the end of January, we went back and looked at our crowd numbers, and we really underestimated the wait times at the rides in Walt Disney World in January of 2018. But to put it in perspective, here's how much we were off. The average day in Walt Disney World in January was busier in terms of wait times than any 30-day period in summer of 2018. So even if you took it from Memorial Day for 30 days after that, if you took the first week of June when most schools are out of session to the middle of July, if you took any part of June to any part of July, any part of July to any part of August, any part of August on, none of that was busier than January of 2018. And for us, that was surprising for a couple of reasons. One, January's typically not that busy. Number two, 95% of public schools were in session in January of 2018. 95% of public schools were out of session in June, July, and August of last year. So we're looking at this going, all right, December was pretty typical. Our predictions were very good. In fact, our predictions were very good for all of 2017. But December was fine in terms of crowds. It's pretty much what we predicted. My question to our statisticians was this. Did we all of a sudden become idiots on January 1st? Like, did we just completely forget how to predict crowds? Or, what other possible explanations are there? Did all of America's parents decide independently that on January 1st that truancy was going to be fine and we're going to take our kids out of school and take them to Disney World? And maybe there was some of that, right? So there was a hurricane back in September of 2017. A lot of people postponed their trips for the rest of the year. A few may have scheduled it in January when work is relatively slow. The economy was also doing really, really well at the end of the year. Maybe some people took their anticipated tax breaks, tax cuts, and visited. And that probably explains about 2/3 of what we saw, maybe half. But it doesn't explain the other half. So we started looking at it, and we started asking around, cast members who work in the parks, cast members who work in offices in Disney. We're like, dude, what's going on here? And what we heard over and over again was some combination of cutbacks and employee shortages. So the way that we checked for that is pretty straightforward. We started counting the number of people who came off of rides. And here's why. So we know, based on historical data, that rides like Space Mountain, if they're operating at full capacity, if every car is full and every car that Disney could possibly put on the track is on the track, Space Mountain can handle around 1,800 people an hour. Let's say 1,800. So we started counting how many people were coming out of the rides. And for mid-February, when we finally figured out what was going on here, what we saw was the rides were running about 25% less than the capacity you would have expected. So if the ride can handle 1,800 people an hour, Disney was running it at 1,300 people an hour, 1,400 people an hour. And in Disneyland, we saw capacities as low as 33%. So if the ride capacity for Space Mountain, and off the top of my head, I don't remember what it is for Disneyland, but if the ride capacity was 1,800, they were running it at 600 people an hour.
Gosh.
And it was exactly what you would expect, that when you run the ride at 1/3 capacity, the wait times were, over 100 minutes. And it wasn't just Space Mountain. It was Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, right? So we measured one day where, from park opening to, early afternoon, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train was only running 3 trains instead of its normal 5. And eventually they brought on a 4th and a 5th in the afternoon. But by that point, the wait times were astronomical. And if you look at the pattern of this, not only is it there, but it's at Big Thunder, and you look at other rides, you start to wonder why this is happening. And the only thing that we could come up with is that Disney was trying to keep its maintenance and labor costs down. So the fewer people that you staff at Space Mountain and these other rides, the less you have to pay in labor, right? And the fewer cars that you run on the rides, the less maintenance you have to do on the track, right? Because less wear and tear on the track, less wear and tear on the cars, right? So Disney saves money on that. So I think what Disney was trying to do in January, and I 100% believe this is true, Disney was trying to see how much they could cut back capacity without affecting guest satisfaction. And I think they also did not anticipate the extra people that were coming in January. So they tried to cut back capacity to save money at exactly the time when more people than expected were showing up, and that's what caused it. In my heart, right, to the core of my being, that's exactly what I believe happened. And I think Disney started fixing that in mid-February, and I think lately over the last, this is basically they've been first week of March or so, they've been running rides basically at 100% capacity every day. And they should, by the way, because it's spring break. They should run everything at 100% capacity.
Well, the interesting thing there's a few interesting things. I mean, one, I know they can save money that way. I've seen it worse at my local Six Flags where they run one roller coaster train and it takes forever. But, they're still, when they're drawing that many people, it stands out. But I just wonder, and I know I'm not running a publicly traded company, so this is me as a guest more as anything. But, I mean, are the gains worth it? Because I'm curious, in terms of, you mentioned satisfaction, because, the day I went, Space Mountain went down for 4 hours. And so then that even, I waited 35 minutes in the Fast Pass line that night because it was so long. I'm outside through the whole thing. And I also noticed on our trip, we had a great trip, but the Fast Pass lines were long. And I wonder then, if they're cutting back those things, are they cutting back the number of Fast Passes they're giving out? Because they're probably not, because then that just screws up the whole calculation, right? I mean, how far can they go? I just feel like it's very short term. Have you seen anything in your surveys, from people going during those times, more negatives to, have you seen any change in that so far?
Actually, it's a great point. I haven't looked because we haven't compiled yet our surveys for January and February. I will look at that and get back to you on that. That's an interesting question. But I think that's exactly what Disney's trying to do, though. Disney's trying to find this balance between saving money on ride ops and guest satisfaction. And I'll give you an exact point. Years ago, and I think you remember this, there were times where you could go in September or October, and Disney would be running the rides like Space Mountain so that there would be a 10-minute wait in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Right? We've all seen it. Those days are long gone. Starting in about late 2015, Disney started cutting the ride capacity when they thought that the number of guests in the park was going to be low. And they're using things like FastPass Plus, where you're telling Disney where you're going to be 60 days in advance. They're using data from that to do staffing. So what we saw starting in late 2015 is a huge spike in average wait times throughout the park. I'm talking 40, 50, 60% on average over the entire park. Numbers that can't be explained by attendance. There's no way that attendance went up 40, 50, 60% in the Magic Kingdom. And we saw the same thing in 2016. We saw the same thing in 2017. It's Disney, and what Disney is doing is they're testing how long the shortest line can be before everyone gets aggravated and asks for their money back. I again, among the things that I believe in my heart of hearts, that's one of them. Absolutely no doubt in my mind, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it, because even having visited a couple times in January, I went, my favorite, memory is going January 2005, when literally the Pirates had a sign that said 0 minutes, and like we walked on. It was just my wife and I. Like we walked on everything, and I was like, "This is the greatest thing ever." It cost nothing because it was the post 9/11 and everything, and they did that, and then we went kind of each time we've gone, like since, especially the last 3 or 4 years. You don't really see that. You might see it like during the fireworks or late at night, but in general, even a slow day, really you end up just
minimum 30-minute wait at Space Mountain. I think that's if you ever see a wait less than that, someone somewhere in Disney has not done their job and they've overstaffed. You'll see the short waits now, but you'll see them during hard ticket events. Like if you went to the after hours stuff, I went to one a couple weeks ago, and I walked on everything. The first time we went to one of the after-hours events last year, Laurel went. She said she was literally the only person in the Space Mountain building, and I've never experienced that. I've been the only person in Frontierland before, but not on Space Mountain, and that's kind of amazing. But I think that's what Disney's moving to. It's during the day you're going to have a minimum wait of 30 minutes at the headliner rides, and if you want to experience a truly empty park, you'll pay again to visit the park on the same day. So you'll pay twice.
Yeah, and the one thing is, in one sense, it's kind of brilliant from a business perspective because they're still getting, obviously people still are going. In that sense, it kind of makes me crazy at the same time.
So Disney has this conference every year in September. It's their Disney's Data Science Conference, and literally the people from Disney's Data Science group go. They're like 60 PhDs, not joking, all very smart people. We send our statistician, Fred Hazelton, down. And Fred actually has, and I'm not making this up, Fred actually has a contingent of fans in the Disney data science community. The people who work for Disney, honest to God, know Fred's work and admire it. But in the conversations that they had, when they're sort of talking over lunch or whatever, you learn what people are working on. And again, I'm not making this up. There's a guy whose job is to price out hamburgers and hot dogs, literally down to the penny to figure out how much you're willing to spend, and they will run experiments, in the parks and at different restaurants, trying to figure out whether you'll pay, $9.89 or $9.90 per a hamburger. Literally, 1 cent is hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue, and so that I'm sure that the data scientists are doing the same thing with the wait times, right? They're trying to see, if how many people complain at 20-minute wait times on average versus 30-minute wait times, and they're trying to figure out how many refunds they give and whether they save enough on maintenance to do that. And again, I believe this is what's happening based on the conversations we've had with people. But I was talking to Fred when he was at this conference, and he's talking to the data science people, and I was like, Fred, did you ever ask anybody if they actually enjoyed their job? Like, at the end of the day, right, when you're on your deathbed, is anyone going to say, I wish I would have spent more time pricing those hot dogs? I just don't see it, right? But there's value in that to Disney, and I think that's where sort of we differ in the value of data science. Like, and this sounds hokey, right? But use your powers for good, right? Yeah. I don't know. Anyway,
it's crazy.
But it's true. I mean, if anyone doubts that this is happening, Google it. Google, Disney data science, and see what comes up in terms of job openings. They are looking for PhDs in data science to do exactly the things that I said. And again, that's fine. But I kind of hope that one day some of that computing power and some of that academic research gets pushed into things that improve guest satisfaction, not just revenue. That's what I'm hopeful for.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they're thinking of it in terms of how far can we push it where we can still get satisfaction or, have satisfied customers. But part of it is how are they going to know? I mean, they'll know because they'll do surveys, and I've taken their surveys, and that helps. But if somebody just decides, I'm not going back, they're not vocal online, they don't like to take surveys, and they just don't come, it's just trickier. I think it's a dangerous game. It's not. I understand why they're doing it, and it's working very well for them. But you've seen companies not as big as Disney, but like that didn't care about, or did something different that just failed, that were huge. And I don't think they're going to fail, but I just wonder, in a sense, they're thinking short term, which is okay, and they're relying on things like Galaxy's Edge, where people will accept almost anything to go there.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge that they're facing, is that the risk is that they're alienating a lot of long-term fans in the pursuit of short-term gains. Now, I will point out that 20 years from now, the current management team will definitely not be in place. 10 years from now, the current management team, well, the current management team doesn't really care about 10 years from now. They care about, this quarter or the next quarter, maybe, this fiscal year, and that's it. But there's a lot of goodwill, I think, that's being wasted that doesn't need to be wasted. So and again, I don't want to turn this into an entire complaint show, so we should talk about something happy here. But Disney made $8 billion last year.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the entire American way of life would collapse, or that Disney's stock price would collapse if they made $7.9 billion instead, right? Or $7.8 billion. Right. I mean, the numbers just aren't. That number is so large that it defies grasping, right? They could put more money into the parks, and we would understand it. They could pay their employees more, we would understand it. And there's no reason why they can't do all of those things, right? There's no reason why all of the gains have to go to just the shareholders, right? I think Disney's underinvested in the theme parks since Bob Iger has been CEO. I think the numbers bear that out. I don't think Disney pays its employees enough. So I don't think, if you think of a company, as being a company's interests as being, its employees, its shareholders, and its customers, I think only one of that group is getting any attention from current management. It should be the other two as well.
Yeah, no.
I've said enough.
I can't disagree. I have one more negative question, but I'm going to pass on that one. I will come back to that. Let's jump into that.
Was it about parking?
Yes. We're going to skip.
I've said enough on parking.
Okay, well, we might come back to that or whatnot. Let's just move on to the next one here.
All right. Cool.
All right. So let's talk about...
I do think they are doing a number of good things. I think the gondola system is just fascinating.
Well, we're going to talk about that. See, that's
all right. Okay. All right.
So this is funny. I'm going to read part of my question. I try not to read these, but construction is well underway for the gondolas. That's just funny that you said that. But I think these are amazing. We talked about this a year ago. I think these are going to be really exciting. So on a similar note, what do you think? Now they've done this.
Yeah.
They've got this, still have a huge burden of this transportation structure. Not talking about parking, but what is the next stage? Like, what's the next thing they're going to do? Something like maybe more forward thinking, like gondolas or something like that. What do you think they could do to continue kind of down that road?
I'll be shocked if they don't do self-driving cars. I will be like by 2020, if there's not a self-driving car on the roads at Disney, someone somewhere will have done something wrong. I 100% believe that Disney is the perfect opportunity for self-driving cars. So the Reedy Creek Improvement District owns the roads. They could do whatever they want on the roads. If they wanted to paint the roads green and pink so that the self-driving car cameras could better make out the lane markers, they can do it. Nothing's stopping them, right? They don't have to ask for voters for approval. They don't have to go to the state government. They could do whatever they want. If there aren't self-driving cars in Walt Disney World by 2020 and some sort of test, something will have gone wrong. And I think that is really interesting for a number of reasons. One, they can dedicate lanes to the self-driving cars. So you know how much easier it is now to get to and from Disney Springs because of those dedicated bus lanes now? Have you seen those, Dan?
I have seen them. I haven't really experienced them much.
Transformational. I mean, you no longer have to go through all of the stoplights as regular traffic.
Stoplights were so bad. So
yeah,
that makes me happy.
Yeah, it's insane. But they could do the same thing, right? They could make dedicated self-driving car lanes. And with that, you can do a lot more. So, for example, if you know that the self-driving car picked up somebody at Pop Century, you could drop them off directly at the Magic Kingdom at the bus entrance, because you'll be able to know, if you're Disney, whether the car stopped anywhere and picked up any other passengers. And if it didn't, right, the people that just got on, scan their Magic Bands or whatever when they got in at Pop Century, why not just drop them off at the Magic Kingdom? Why drop them off at the TDC? So in terms of convenience, there's a huge opportunity there for self-driving cars. They could also be electric, because Disney could recharge them every day. Yeah. And plus they don't have to, I mean, from one end of the property to the other, what is it, 20 miles? I mean, you could, with a 200-mile range, they could do 10 trips a day, and before recharging. And so you could have a fleet of them ready to go at any given time. It combines the sort of the direct point-to-point transportation that Americans have come to expect with the cool factor of self-driving cars. I think that's a huge, huge, huge opportunity for Disney. Like I said, it's too much money for Disney to pass up.
Yeah, I would love to see it because I also think too, if they had it at Disney World, I'm somebody who would love to see it. One, I don't want my daughters to have to drive. Especially my youngest daughter because she's
How old is
5.
your daughter?
My
Oh,
daughters are
there's no way she'll never. If
8
she
and
learns to
5.
drive, so if your 5-year-old learns to drive, it'll be for the same reason that she learns to ride a horse, because she wants to, right? Because it's going to be a hobby, not because she has to. I don't think in 10 years anyone will learn to drive. Like I've told my daughter who's 19. I mean, she's the last generation that will learn to drive because her kids won't. Her kids will do it again if you want to do it as a hobby.
Like riding a horse or riding.
It is.
I don't know. Bike probably isn't. It won't even be that normal. But something that you do as a hobby. Yeah. I mean, that's a little selfish, but really, I would love it. Kind of how originally, way back, Epcot was kind of supposed to be, where you have these new technologies, you show them off at Disney World where all the people are going, and they get more excited, and then they go home and they see these things.
The business opportunity because for the vast majority of Americans, if they go to Disney World and they step inside a self-driving car, that will be literally the only time they've ever been in a self-driving car. Imagine the branding opportunity there if it's a Tesla or it's a GM or it's some other brand. Imagine the mind-blowing experience that those people will have. Not only is it Disney World, but it's a self-driving car. I mean, I can't imagine the size of the truck that you would need to haul around all of the money you would make as a self-driving car manufacturer if you could do that. The size of the truck, my mind can't fit that in.
I hope they're trying to figure this out because I would love to see them be at the forefront of it.
So I know we complain about a lot of things. But I say that the transportation department in Disney has been killing it the last couple of years. Everything that they've done has been fantastic. I don't know who's heading up transportation in Disney World, but they are doing a fantastic job over the last couple of years.
Yeah, the gondolas, I mean, I'm really excited to see. I want them to be huge successes, not just for me or for, when we go. I want to be a success because I feel like if they're a hit, that's only going to encourage Disney to do more things like that. If people love them, and most importantly, if they are good operationally, that they could be huge. Now, that was question 4. I'm going to jump back. Question 5 will be on with the same topic just because I don't want us to be here for 6 hours. But so my concern, though, is if they do self-driving cars, they could treat them like the minivans, where the minivans, I think, are a cool service, not the airport ridiculous charge, but it's kind of a cool thing. But would they just use them and then charge you a crazy amount, or would they use it more as like a substitute for the bus system? I mean, where do you think they would lean there?
I see it. That's an interesting question. I think they would probably charge for it, but I don't think it would be as much as a Lyft because you wouldn't have the liability associated with a human driver, and you wouldn't have to pay the human driver. Plus, if they're doing it with self-driving cars, it would probably be subsidized or underwritten by whoever's making the self-driving cars.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't expect it to be anywhere near the cost of an Uber or a Lyft, which, let's face it now, I mean, for me to get from my apartment to the studios is literally $5.65 on Uber. It's the least expensive charge that I could possibly get. So, I mean, what would a self-driving car be? $5?
Right. Yeah, they can't go crazy.
No. And again, you would do it just to say you did it.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I'm glad to hear your excitement about it because it's one of those things where part of me thinks, even not just at Disney, in life, because part of me thinks they're going to be here, and then part of me thinks, man, people are so stubborn. They're just going to want to drive their cars forever, and it's not going to take off like it should.
When was the last time you drove to Disney, Dan?
Well, we did it once last spring, and I think we don't really want to do that again. That was really, from Missouri. It was really
long. So when I lived in North Carolina, I would drive down every couple of weeks, and it got to the point where I stopped taking the most direct route because I was bored with it.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking to myself, there's going to come a day where it's going to be basically like being on a train, but in your car, where the car will drive, you could sit back and read, and just think how much more productive you would be.
Oh, yeah.
Number one, it's vastly cheaper than flying. Driving is still vastly cheaper than flying for, anything under, 12 to 15 hours. If you could do that drive and be safe and not have to pay attention second by second, where you could watch TV or, read a book or surf the web or whatever, get some work done, it's a vastly different experience, and I think that's a lot of opportunity for people to gain back some time in their lives, especially on long commutes. So I think it's coming.
Well, great. That excites me. So, on a similar note, my next question is, okay, so we're talking about right now. It's kind of more of a theoretical question, but I think you're game for it. So, we're really in this like blockbuster era of theme parks. We're getting big budgets and the prices are high, and it's, IP and everything, and there was a slowdown in the 2000s, but we saw a little bit of this in the 90s, but now it's like crazy. So, beyond this, let's look beyond the 50th, beyond what's going on right now. Like, what's the next evolution for theme parks? I mean, what do we see? Like, I'm trying to think of like blue sky meetings now. I know Disney might not be thinking about it, but the thinkers that they have at their company, like what, like beyond, let's create an immersive land, let's bring in an IP, let's like Galaxy's Edge. What's the next step for people in terms of theme parks?
A couple of years ago, I would have said, virtual reality or augmented reality. But I think it's going to be this. I think it's going to be that the theme parks know who you are and remember you. So, like, you'll be able to play a role when you're in the theme parks. We've talked about this a little bit with Galaxy's Edge, where depending on what you do on the Millennium Falcon ride, the outcome of that will follow you through the land, right? So as you interact with characters or with the droids, they'll know what you did on Millennium Falcon ride. And when you go back to your hotel will know what you did on the Millennium Falcon ride. But imagine that not only over a trip, but over a lifetime, where you gain experience and credibility or whatever metrics Disney wants to measure. Imagine that over a lifetime, where you go back and the characters that you meet know what you did the last time and what you enjoyed. And it may sound a little bit creepy to some people, but, they know what kind of food you like, or, and Disney offers you coupons for those food or whatever. The ability, I think, the technology is there to hyper-personalize everybody's trip and to maintain that over time and to give you rewards for coming back again and again. And I think that's the thing that you're going to see. Whether VR makes it as a technology or augmented reality makes it as technology, I don't know. I mean, I see pros and cons on it. By the way, have you seen The Void at Disney Springs?
I have not, though.
Fantastic.
Is it really? Great. I'm excited.
Oh my God. Best thing Disney's done in the last year. Easy. Then we'll talk about it. But yeah, I think the idea of personalization, where you'll be able to create a persona that follows you around the park and that has a history in the parks, I think is something that no one's done. I mean, Disney can do it. Like, I don't see a Six Flags doing that. There's no real adventure in it. I mean, Six Flags has excellent rides, but it's not a theme park. But in Disney, if you can, if Jack Sparrow knows what you did in the rest of Adventureland, that starts to become interesting. So I think that's going to be the big thing.
Yeah, that interests me because you see little things now, like where they had a few tests. I remember I heard like at Disneyland with the train around Tomorrowland when it came out with Plus Ultra. And then you see like Knott's Berry Farm has something like this where you do little tasks inside of the land, in their ghost town. But this almost interests me because this is like taking that to like, that is just like a setup and this is something completely different. I mean, I think it's cool. I mean, people are going to look at it and go, well, is that like Westworld or something?
That's exactly the analogy I was going to make. Yeah. So let me ask you this question. Other than the robots, what prevents Disney from doing that sort of state or game management in Disney World? The technology exists. You could do it, and it's $1 billion. Okay, whatever. Disney made $8 billion last year, so what's $1 billion, right? But imagine that your vacation isn't just a vacation, but it's a story that evolves over the entire length of the trip day by day. And that at the end of it, it's a coherent narrative where you can say, here is the story of my vacation. That's amazing if they could do it. Again, the technology is there to do it. I think the challenge is there enough skill in the Disney company to write that sort of storyline? Remember in Westworld, it's the British guy that writes the stories.
Right. Yeah.
What are the stories? And by the way, I think this is the big challenge in the Star Wars Hotel. The challenge isn't in the technology of pretending video screens or windows and things like that. That's all doable. I had it in my kitchen 2 years ago. It's not hard. I think the challenge for them is in the story and the gameplay, and because there are so many things that people can do And you want to make it as realistic as possible, which means you want to give people as many options as possible. That's the huge challenge in managing that narrative.
Yeah, and also I think I agree with that. And the Star Wars Hotel is a perfect example. Is kind of the next stage from things like those specific games and lands. It's like the next level of that. So it's almost like you're going in levels. To me, almost like the biggest hurdles are the amount of people that go to Disney World. I almost feel like you'd have to start out and have a new park and then charge people like Discovery Cove or something level or more probably than that. Like kind of like the hotel. You'd have to charge them a crazy amount at first, and then maybe as you went along, because that's what I would love if it was something that everyone could do. I don't know how you do that they'd have to hire so many people.
Well, I think the hotel is a great example because it's a few hundred, it's gonna be a few hundred people. You can manage that, but even then, that's an enormous amount of complexity. Like I can't wrap my head around how much complexity that is, and for it to be interesting, there gonna have to be so many options available at each step that to understand the entire game will require a computer. Like there's no way that a human is going to be able to manage all of that complexity. To be able to do it for 60,000 people, 70,000 people in the Magic Kingdom in a given day, again, I can't imagine that technology. But again, if you threw $1 billion at the problem, could you solve it? Again, it's not technology that's an issue. It's, can I for $1 billion, can I hire the best gameplay people to write the most elaborate one-day game I've ever seen? $1 billion is a lot of money, and I tell people this all the time. You would be surprised what you can do with $100,000.
Oh yeah.
What you can accomplish with $100,000, but with $1 billion, which is what 10,000 times larger, if my math is correct, it's a staggering amount of money, and Disney has that money. They can do some amazing things with it. So I hope that they have the will to do it. So, and I think eventually they will. I think there are enough people. They might not spend $1 billion on it, but I think somewhere in the Disney company, there are people who are thinking exactly these same things and who are hopefully ambitious enough to get it done.
Well, that's really interesting. I'm excited to see where that goes, and I'm not that worried. I mean, I'm worried about a lot of things, but that is not one of my top worries if we're going to have Westworld.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would love to interact with robots. Sentient robots like Westworld. Parts of Westworld I think are a little bit creepy.
Yes.
But the idea that you can talk to, it doesn't have to be robots too. It could be people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna shoot them, so it's it's okay if they're people. Yeah, but the idea that they can remember things and interact, I think is super, super interesting. And again, technology is going to be the backbone for that, but the story is going to be the thing that's important.
Yeah, it's really very similar to how things go with almost anything in park attraction. It's like, I mean, I don't mean story like from A to B, it must be narrative, but just things that just are a mess just don't work. So, and this on that level. Okay, well, for my final question is actually kind of cheat a little bit. It's actually a bunch of questions, but it's what I call the rapid fire question round. All I'm going to do, it's just like 7 or 8 questions. I'm just going to ask you a question where just what you think, and that'll be it. Okay.
All right, go ahead. All right, I'm ready.
All right. If price is no object, what is the can't miss restaurant to visit at Disney Springs?
At Disney Springs, actually, there's nothing that's not affordable at Disney Springs. So it's going to depend on what you want.
What's the best thing you should do there? If you're one restaurant, you're the only person who can go, or the only one restaurant you go to, you've never been there. What's the one that somebody should see?
Boathouse, because it has a little bit something for everyone. My number 2 choice was Homecoming, which has a smaller menu than Boathouse, but everything that they do is fantastic. My 3rd would have been the Edison, by the way. I really like the Edison's menu.
Cool. All right. So which upcoming expansion at Disney or Universal is going to land with the biggest thud?
Expansion with the biggest thud.
Or even new attraction. Just something coming that's going to not work.
Pixar Pier at Disneyland. I don't know what they were thinking there.
Yeah. All right. True or false? Future World will have a different name 10 years from now.
True, it has to, because it's no longer Future World. I mean, this is my big complaint, that there's no consistent theming among Disney theme parks anymore.
Yeah. What Disney World resort is the most underrated resort?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Wilderness Lodge. If you've been there recently, it's beautiful. They've got all of their dining options are good. The cabins are pricey at $1,800 to $2,000 a night, but they're vastly better than what was happening at the Polynesian. I love the cabins. I'm not going to stay there again because it's $2,000 a night. But everything that Disney's done at the Wilderness Lodge is fantastic. In fact, in general, I think Disney's pouring a lot of money into the hotels. Not when I say resorts, I mean hotels.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Wilderness Lodge, kind of fantastic.
Yeah, I've stayed at the Animal Kingdom Lodge a few times and love it.
You haven't stayed at the Wilderness Lodge?
No, I've been trying to get my wife to want to stay there. I've asked, but then we love the Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Okay, if you stay at the Wilderness Lodge, if you don't like it, I will pay for your room. Go stay at the Wilderness Lodge.
It's on the list, I tell you, the top of the list. Okay.
The rooms themselves aren't that great. I mean, I would stay DVC because you get a little bit more room, and I would stay DVC in the main building, not in the Boulder Ridge, whatever name they're calling it, the old Wilderness Lodge Villas. Stay in the main building. But, I mean, the background music is great. The food is good. The setting is unbelievable. It's very quiet. And they put a lot of money into it recently. It looks really, beautiful. Really good.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So most important question, Sammy Hagar or Gary Cherone?
Oh, Sammy Hagar all the way. If I've never listened to Van Halen 3. Honest to God, I've never listened to a complete song on Van Halen 3. It's just not my thing. There's nothing wrong with Sammy Hagar. The only thing wrong with Sammy Hagar is he suffers in comparison to David Lee Roth, but I think Sammy's a decent person, good singer. I enjoy all of the Sammy era songs with Van Halen. I prefer David Lee Roth, but there's nothing wrong with Sammy Hagar. I wish him nothing but the best. Also, he and I drink tequila, so
very similar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nothing wrong with actually the more controversial question would have been Wolfie or Michael Anthony.
Well, I didn't want to ask David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar because I thought that would be too easy.
It's obvious.
All right, so last question.
Again, there's nothing wrong with Cherone either. I mean, Cherone was put in a no-win situation with Van Halen 3. There was no way that fans were going to accept a third lead singer for the band. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that was a brave move by him to even do that.
I'll kind of credit for attempting it, right? I mean, it's wait, what is this saying? It's different to talk of bulls than to be in the bull ring, right? Which I love, right? So he did it. He gets.
Can't take that. Okay, last question. I've cut a few because we're still. I feel like we can't have rapid fire. I tried this one other time, but it worked much better. But all right. So here's the big question: how long in minutes will the line be for the battle attraction at Galaxy's Edge on its official opening day? What's the maximum it's going to hit?
800.
800.
800. At least, okay. If it's less than 600, shocked. I will start taking bets now that it will not be less than 600, but I think 800.
Wow. That's going to be insane. I'll be watching comfortably from home, but enjoying it.
So what I'm saying is an 8 to 10 hour wait to get on the ride, and I'll put money down on that right now.
Okay, so this was a lot of fun. Thank you. I feel like we've hit on a lot of interesting things, and I even ditched the parking question because that's just going to make me mad if I talk.
Yeah, there's no rationale for it. So, but what is it? I mean, I think if they hit a home run with Galaxy's Edge, a lot of people will forgive a lot of things. So let's see what happens there. I hope they pull it off.
Well, I'm excited to have so much to look for. I mean, so many things coming. Even if I don't love every single one. There's a lot happening right now. It's hard to complain about that.
No. I mean, the fact that there's so much stuff in the pipeline, I think, is good. I would like to see this, continue rolling through, past 2021. So, if we get the same level of activity through 2025, I will start to feel better about the company. So, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so if listeners are not familiar with what you're doing and want to learn more, what's the best place to go online to find out what you're doing with everything?
So I run the website touringplans.com, where we have trip planning advice and tools. Some of them are unique. Some of them actually work. You can also find me on the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's disneydish.bandcamp.com. And then, of course, I'm on Twitter at Len Testa.
Well, excellent, Len. This was really fun. I have some things I'm more excited about and others I'm even grumpier about. But but I'm really happy that you came on. Thanks so much.
Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it, Dan.
If you'd like to know more about what's happening here at the Tomorrow Society, you can go to tomorrowsociety.com and check out the blog and stay up to date on all the latest podcasts. You can also follow me on Twitter at TomorrowSOC or Facebook or Instagram at Tomorrow Society. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email me at dan@tomorrowsociety.com. The music for this podcast is composed by Adam Hookey and performed by the Sophisticated Babies. If you'd like to stay up to date on the latest episodes, you can subscribe to the Tomorrow Society podcast on Apple Podcasts or your favorite provider. And don't forget to leave a rating or a review. It's a great way for more people to find out about the show. I've got a lot more great interviews coming up in the near future, so definitely stay tuned. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you again very soon.